Welcome back in, everybody, to a Friday edition of Birds 365 here. June 13th. We're about 5.5 weeks away from training camp. Spring work officially in the rearview mirror, everybody, as we prep for the season. I'll give you guys a countdown. Once I get to John here, I'll look it up. I think we're probably around 80 days, somewhere in that range, 82, 83 days away from the banner drop. So moving right along, moving very quickly. Johnny Mac, let's have a little bit of fun on this Football Friday. We got 15 minutes until Chris Franklin gets here. All right, we're going to do a bold prediction, and we're going to do, if you could add, we'll start with this one. If you could add one player right now, who would you add, why, and where would you add, Johnny Mac?
Well, I would still add an edge rusher, but it wouldn't be one of the big guys. Trey Hendrickson's gonna. I still think he's gonna play with Cincinnati. And TJ Watts certainly is going to play with Pittsburgh. And the Eagles aren't in a position at a $35 million player. So, it would be somebody, but it's going to be a CJ Gardner-Johnson like trade, I would think, of somebody who maybe hasn't quite lived up to the hype and is coming to the end of his rookie contract. And, I've talked about Jahan Dotson here as a sneaky trade possibility. We just talked to some of the, Terrace Marshall has a phenomenal camp, and they say, well, this guy's pretty good. He's pretty talented. He's pretty good. Jahan's not going to be here next year. He's a good player. So, can you flip him and get something?
Right.
Not that they need draft picks. So it's very unlikely, but that type of player, Jahan Dotson type of player at the edge rushing position. Now, I promise I'm going to do my homework. I haven't done it. I can't give you a name yet. People have brought up Trayvon Walker. He's not going in. That I'm not talking about, again, former number 1 overall pick.
I don't know who the heck is in that camp, like the Anais.
There's always somebody.
The Jahan Dotson type of player at edge.
There's always somebody. It might be a former second-round pick or third, not necessarily the 16th overall pick.
Right.
But CJ, that type of guy at the edge rusher position. I think that's still the more likely. But even that, I'm much more confident, when Lane Johnson brings up Josh Uche and Jalix Hunt performs the way he did, I'm much more confident after the spring than I was before the spring. And safety, I don't see the need to add the Justin Simmons type of player. I don't see the need to add the Jair Alexander type of player at cornerback. So I'm still on edge rusher, but it's got to be an under the radar guy. And maybe when Chris is here, I'll try to come up with a couple names, but it's a lot of young players who probably haven't gotten the opportunity and maybe just need an opportunity.
You feeling any better about the Temu signings at edge? I am, after I heard Lane Johnson give Josh Uche a little bit of love, Johnny Mac. I don't know why, but that made me feel a little bit better. All right. Maybe it's well,
most of my excitement goes with Jalix still more than.
Well, I have Jalix in my head as the starter.
Well, so do I. And then I think Uche. I think Lane's endorsement, and not only Lane but also Zach Baughn's endorsement, have jumped him in front of Ojulari for me. I don't know if that's the case for the Eagles, because Ojulari's the guy they gave $3.5 million, which isn't a lot, but significantly more than.
Could that also be dictated, though, John, by other teams? Like maybe they really wanted the player, and there was another team that was giving them 2 or 3 or 2.5, and they were just like, our edge rusher's too thin. We need this dart throw. Let's just pay him the extra money.
Yeah, I doubt it, because, to me, it's like, I think he could have gotten more somewhere else. Probably could have gotten 2 years, but I don't know if that's even the case. They like the player coming out of college. I just think they liked the player and they thought he had a higher upside. Maybe he does. Um, maybe he does, but maybe I'm putting too much emphasis on Lane's endorsement. And, when you're speaking off the cuff, sometimes, all right, they're asking me about edge defenders.
There's like 10 of them out there.
Yeah. Even Vic couldn't come up with the other guys. the KJ Henrys of the world, the O'Shawn Mathises of the world, and the other guys. So, maybe I'm putting too much on that, but I didn't like what I saw from Ojulari in coverage, which is the rare, but I think they all look like fishes out of water for the most part.
Except for Jalix, probably, who has that safety background.
Yeah, that does help. That does help. And he did look the best in dropping in a go, which makes a lot of sense. But I don't know. I'm not as high on Ojulari as most people. I think he's undersized. He's injury prone. 20-point scorer on a bad NBA team. I get Eric Wilson vibes, but as edge rusher. People get enamored by the note. Well, he had 6 sacks if he could do this. 6 sacks on a team, a garbage team. It's like somebody's got to score 20 points.
It's true.
In a figurative standpoint.
I'm feeling way more I don't know. Maybe it's false confidence. Maybe it's just getting closer. But I do feel like Jalix Hunt and Nolan Smith could provide what the starters provided last year. Maybe not to that level, but good enough that your defense isn't suffering because of them at all. I really think that. I think Jalix is going to be a good player. And I think Nolan could be effectively what Josh Sweat was last year, with setting the edge, a 3-down player, and he can get after the quarterback as well.
I from what Nolan's going to stay on the left side for the most part. So, Josh was more the right side. So that's a little bit different, which is kind of weird because, from a size standpoint, at least old school thinking, but again, that's old school. The left end was the base end. That was the run support guy, but that's in the old days. The right end was the weak side pass rusher. That was the pass rusher. That's why left tackles got paid all the money they got paid. Now there's pass rushers all over the place, so it doesn't matter. So that's probably more old school thinking. But Josh is just, bigger, stronger. They got a bunch of undersized guys.
Jalix could grow into his body though, and be not so undersized. I think he's got a bigger, taller frame. No, I mean he's like 6'3", 6'4", isn't he?
Yeah, he's just under 6'4". He's got long arms. I think that's mostly, and he does have the frame to gain more weight. But I always say Josh is, like I said, if they're doing a movie and they say we need an edge rusher, they're picking Josh Sweat. He's 6'5". He's freakishly long. He's 265. He's just everything you want. And that's why I think a lot of people don't know he was like the number 1 recruit in the country coming out of high school. Number 1. And a lot of that is, and he had that horrible leg injury when he was in high school. So, 5-star recruit. And I still remember the first day I met Josh Sweat. And that's back in, the pre-COVID days in 2018, when you can get guys coming off the field at rookie camp. And I still remember interviewing him right outside the door of the back of the NovaCare complex. And that was my first thought. Like, I don't know if this guy can play, but he looks like he can play. There's certain guys who just Nick calls them first guys off the bus. You know, he's a first guy off the bus guy. Josh Sweat.
I still think Nolan can be that. No, I mean, even if he doesn't look like that guy,
well, not from a physical standpoint.
Well, no, not from. I'm not saying he looks like him or is the same build as him.
That's my. I'm saying
good on the field.
Nolan is not a first guy off the bus guy. That's what I'm saying.
Well, but can he be on the field? Can he set the edge? Can he rush the passer? Can he stop the run? Can he do what he needs to do for the defense to be successful? I think he can.
Well, he did it for a half a season, and the Eagles are very high on him.
But he also had Josh Sweat with him. Can he do it without Josh Sweat out there?
I don't know. It's a big question. Not only Josh Sweat, but Milton Williams and Jalen Carter. I mean, the four-man rush at the end of last season was Nolan Smith, Jalen Carter, Milton Williams, and Josh Sweat. And two of them are gone. And they're both really good players. But I was just speaking about Josh's physical presence.
Yeah, I get what you were saying. He definitely is built. It's like Keely Ringo at corner, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's literally the prototypical build for a cornerback. All right, John, last question here before we get to Chris Franklin. Give me one bold prediction that you actually believe. I'm going to give you mine because I want to just set the, where I'm going with it. I think Jalen Hunt leads the team in sacks this year.
Yeah, that is bold. Nolan should. I mean, if he's healthy, and he's going to be healthy. I mean, there's no doubt that he's going to be ready for training camp. I think it would be a bad thing if Nolan doesn't, unless it's Nolan's got 10 or 11, and Jalen has like 15. Then it's not a bad thing. But I don't think.
Well, no, I'm John. To your credit, you've been talking about this for years. That sacks aren't everything. Like years. I mean,
oh yeah,
you used to.
Well, that's another one of my.
Someone asked, what's your stop? That used to be your biggest when Jody was the host. That you guys would fight about sacks and pressures like crazy. But I'm kind of like over them. Not that they don't matter.
Good. If you talk about pressure stuff.
Yeah, I just want a guy that can play the position well. Do it.
Yeah,
well.
I mean, I think people are. And I'm high on Jalen Hunt, but I think people are skipping steps. Like Nolan's way ahead of Jalen Hunt right now. Like
I know I'm. That's why it's bold, John. I'm admittedly skipping.
Yeah, that is very bold. I don't think that. I think he's going to be good. I think he's going to be better than he should be at this stage. And I think a lot of that is because he is so physically gifted. I think sometimes you just go out there and you play and you get better by playing. And I think that's going to be the case with Jalen Hunt. But I think Nolan has to be a better player. And I think he will be. I think he is a better player. That's partially why. And he needs to be. He needs to be a star. Nolan Smith. He's a very important part of this team, Nolan Smith.
No, he is. He is. You have a bold prediction for me or what?
I don't know but it's not that bold, but I said it pretty consistently, and I said it in this show. Jalen Hurts will have a better season this year. And I think most people, because he won the Super Bowl, think he had his best season. So it's more of a I wouldn't call it bold. I'm trying.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. Jalen Hurts will have a better season. That's like the opposite of bold, John. That's like a mute prediction.
No, well, it isn't because people are uneducated on he didn't have the best season last year. That's the bold part of it. Like people, damn it, you got me going down this route. Because he won the Super Bowl, they think he was phenomenal, and he was not. He had his worst season from start to finish, and he will be much better, and he might not win the Super Bowl. So maybe I'll add that. He probably won't win the Super Bowl, but he will perform better individually. Still not bold, but
that's all right. I'll take. I didn't expect the J-Mac prediction to be overly bold. I know that's not typically your style, which is fine.
How about Keely Ringo's the week one starter, and he finishes the season as the starter.
I like that.
Fine.
That's a good prediction. I think that's fair. I mean, not everybody's sold on that.
And he's fine. No issues with Kelee Ringo. There's going to be some growing pains, but he's not getting benched. Week 1 starter. Week 17 starter. Week 18, actually.
Who's a guy who could start the season and get benched?
Tyler Steen.
Yeah, that's true. That's a perfect one. Yeah, that's right. That's the one you predicted a little bit earlier, that Tyler Steen would start, and then we'd have Matt Pryor in there by what'd you say, week 4, week 6 or something?
Something like that. That's what happened with Isaac. They jumped the gun, and Isaac eventually turned into a very good player, but they started him too early, and it was pretty ugly. And they said, all right, going to give him a little breath, go with a veteran. I could see that happening.
Yeah, me too. Me too. We'll see what ends up happening. Great show today so far. We got Chris Franklin coming up. I want to thank everybody in the green room. Got one chat to get to before we get to Chris Franklin. Brian Fleming, what's up, B. Flem? He says, what is J-Mac doing for this break before camp? Are you grilling, hanging out with Ben Van Sumeren and McCord, making the pilgrimage to Minnesota to see the Vikings?
Definitely not a pilgrimage to Minnesota. I did my time there. I got paroled.
Yeah, it's like still 30 degrees probably in Minnesota.
Yeah, I got paroled. But it is for 2 weeks in Minnesota. It is really nice in the spring and summer. You just got to get the right 2 weeks, and you can get out on some of the lakes. But no, I've done my time there, so no on that. I always grill, so that's built into.
I've been having grill issues, Johnny, man. I get the Blackstone and the burn, and something's wrong with my burners. I took the thing apart, I scrubbed it, I cleaned it, I did everything. I still turned it on the grill. Still messed up. I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
You were propping up the Blackstone. I was thinking about it because I got to get. I don't know.
It is nice, though, man. It works. It's nice.
Yeah, I see it's easier but I like the challenge of the grates too. You got to cook things properly.
Like charcoal?
No, I'm a gas guy, but
you're a gas guy. Okay.
I still like the grates. I like to be challenged.
Yeah, I got one with the grates too, but good stuff there. Johnny Mac grilling out this summer. Brief Flem, thanks for the super chat, brother. Thank you all for the super chats, the likes, the shares, the comments. All right, we appreciate all of it.